Hello there. I don't know why I said that like I was talking into my phone, because I'm not. That's great. I'm trying to listen through my phone though, so that way I can see, the usual. Trying to get the audio balance, make sure everything sounds right. See if like you can hear the music, my voice, everything sounds. Lighting is always, 48 problems in one. That's okay. It's a whole thing. I think we can, turn down my mic audio just a tish. See how that sounds. It's, we're working on it. I think we're in a good place. I think this is good. I think this is good. Okay. Technical issues, life issues. We're late today. That's fine. Let's get started. Let's get into it, because I have so many things to say. I said this before. I was very excited to read Cemetery Boys. I wanted to read it last year. I ended up finally having money to buy it this year. And I'm not gonna lie to you. A lot of Aiden Thomas's books, a lot of their books went on sale recently, and so I ended up getting not only Lost in the Neverwoods, because that book sounded super dope. So I got that, and as an ebook, I got the audiobook, because their audiobooks were like $7. So I got the audiobook for Lost in the Neverwoods. I also got the audiobook for Cemetery Boys. So we're probably going to read Cemetery Boys again this year, because I think the audiobook is probably going to sound fantastic. It wasn't until recently that I watched something and someone was like, hey, it's a good idea to listen to the samples of audiobooks before you buy them. And yeah, that probably would have been a great idea, but too late. It's fine. The book, Cemetery Boys. So, oh god, great book. Let's talk about it. We have this guy, Yadriel. He's a trans boy, wants to be a brujo, which is a wizard of sorts, and in their culture, the brujo helps spirits that are tethered still to the physical world, helps them to pass over when need be. If they turn maligno, which is when they lose their minds, get aggressive, and start trying to kill people and stuff like that, then that is really the only time that they would force a spirit to cross over before they're ready. So he wants to do that, but because he's trans, the culture and his Yadriel's father won't allow him to even try the ceremony to be granted the blessing of the powers of a brujo by Lady Death. So Yadriel, and I can't remember if Maritza is his cousin or his friend, but he and Maritza sneak into the church at night and do the ceremony on their own, and it works. Immediately after that, there is, I don't know if it would be considered a power, but there's just this thing in the community where everyone in the community can feel when one of their own has passed, and it seems like they feel it in the same way that said person has passed. So, immediately after he gets granted his powers, he feels this very painful feeling in his chest, and he knows, and everyone knows, that his cousin, I know for sure this guy's his cousin, Miguel, has died. Yadriel wants to go help all of the men to look for Miguel, but his dad tells him explicitly to stay back with the rest of the women. That obviously upsets him, so he and Maritza go looking by themselves. They end up in the older church the community used to go to. It's all in, I believe it's all in one cemetery, but they just ended up building a new church. It's probably bigger as well, so they end up stumbling into the old church because Yadriel just feels drawn there. So they go to the old church, and there they find this necklace of St. Jude, but he feels like this is because you're tethered to a physical thing, and the spirit is going to be tethered to a physical thing, so he finds this necklace of St. Jude, and he feels the spirit is connected to it, so he summons the spirit that's associated with it, and it's not Miguel. It's this school bad boy, Julian Diaz, who is refusing to pass without making sure that his friends are okay. Side note that's very important, and we'll talk about it later. The Garra del Jaguar, it's this set of 4 knives and a jaguar amulet that in the olden times there were a bunch of them that were used for human sacrifices, and once you sacrifice the 4 people, that then you could summon this god who would give you, and once you make the sacrifices, you get an incredible amount of power in the amulet, but it gives you the power, and then you can then summon Balaam. I believe his name is Balaam, and the jaguar god who will like wreak havoc on the world, but you get like immense power, and that's missing. Other like super important thing that's kind of beat over the head is Yadriel does have his tensions and his problems with his father and a lot of the people from the community, his grandmother, his abuelita. He has a lot of problems with them accepting and listening and understanding with his identity. But he has an uncle, and his uncle like totally is there for him, totally gets him, because his uncle doesn't have powers. They consider it like the dilution of powers over the ages. His uncle doesn't have powers, and because of that, he didn't get the right to, as the eldest son, take over and lead the community once their father died. His younger brother did, because his younger brother had powers. So his uncle, he knows what it's like to be cast aside. He knows what it's like to be an outcast, so he totally gets Yadriel. So as time goes on, and as they're talking to Miguel's friend, not Miguel. As they're talking to Julian's friends, they realize that there's a good chance whatever happened to Julian happened to Miguel as well. But they're running out of time. It's coming close to Dia de Muertos. I'm sorry, I know it is Dia de los Muertos, so we'll work on that. But Dia de Muertos, where a lot of the spirits are going to come back and be able to interact with their family. Yadriel would be able to spend that time with his mother, who passed away just the past year. So this is something in general the community is super excited for, looks forward to, but in particular this is a moment for Yadriel to finally be able to see his mother again, also be able to show his mother that he was granted the powers of a brujo, but so time is running short to when that day is supposed to happen, as well as just Julian is not a brujo. He is not really familiar and really used to this culture. So the idea of turning maligno and potentially hurting people, like having no control over himself when he already has some anger issues, really makes him stressed and uncomfortable. So he asks Yadriel to release him, which they've been bonding and stuff over this time. So it's really hard. That's a really hard request for him to do. And I'm not gonna lie, basically from the scene, the entire scene, God, fucking traffic, Jesus. But the entire scene where Yadriel is trying to release, him, I was pretty much in tears the entire time. There was one line, I don't want to give it away because it was so my heart. But like, read the book. There's one moment that I truly, fucking mopeds, God. But I was truly like in tears, could not control it, could not handle it. But that was that. So, but he tries to release Julian, but he can't. We find out that obviously his uncle has taken the sacrificial knives, the Garra del Jaguar, has taken them, has completed this ritual by sacrificing 4 people, which they also make a point that they don't use human sacrifices, they don't use human blood in any of their traditions in this book. They make a big point of it, but they make a big point of it because it is things broke. You seem fine. Cool. Things are freaking out today. But it's a lot of power you can't necessarily control, as well as like being barbaric. And you don't want to use your own blood because then your life force is connected to the spell. It's a lot of power you can't control, and 90% of the time you end up dying. So Uncle is using this human sacrifice with the Garda Jaguar, and it grants him a lot of powers that Brujos have not been able to have in centuries. Which Yadriel is able to defeat his uncle. He didn't mean to, but like in the process of these people dying, there's like this jaguar that is trying to climb out of the pool of, I don't know if it's water or if it's just blood, but it's just trying to climb out of this pool. And Yadriel takes the amulet away from his uncle. Uncle can't control anything now. He falls into the pool, and Jaguar grabs him down. So he dies. Which, you know, kind of deserves it. I don't know. But we have that happen. But the ritual is still complete. So he didn't complete the summoning of Balaam, but the ritual to take their lives and put their life force into the amulet and have that power in the amulet is still complete. Yadriel calls upon Lady Death, and she says that like you could use the amulet to bring them back because the amulet's given them that extreme power, but it would cost you your life. And pretty much Yadriel's like, oh yeah, for sure, it's 4 lives over my 1. Yeah, that makes total sense. And so he uses the amulet to bring people back to life. Before he dies, Maritza, who throughout the book we've known she doesn't perform any magic as a bruja because she's a vegan. So and a lot of their rituals require animal blood. There's just so much human blood laying around in this little cavern that they had this battle in. And so she just pretty much just uses some of that blood and uses it to bring Yadriel back to life. So, and everyone lives happily ever after. His dad, prior to this event, actually, when he found out that Yadriel was able to get the blessing from Lady Death to get the powers of a brujo, his dad was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I, like, let my own biases and my own guesses take over when I should have let Lady Death speak for herself on the situation. And it's like his dad accepted him prior to that, so he's able to go on to have a ceremony acknowledging all of the people that had these ceremonies this past year. And they're able, because he brought everyone back to life, he gets to stay with Julian, which I love. There is, as I say this, and as I was reading it too, I know there's part of you that's like, this whole ending feels like such a cop-out because everyone gets to live. There were no consequences necessarily to this whole thing. But the reason why it doesn't feel like a cop-out is because it all still plays into the rules that we've been given this entire book. Like I was saying, I felt like it was super obvious that the uncle was performing the ceremony with the Garda Jaguar. We were told 1,000 times in this book that the knives and the amulet were missing. We were told so many times, like, I can't find it. And Uncle straight off the bat was like, I know it's like to be the black sheep of the family. I know what it's like for them to turn their backs on you. You sound bitter. You sound quite bitter, sir. You're gonna kill somebody. So I personally thought he was gonna kill Yadriel as well. I was misunderstood. I thought there were 5 blades that he had to use, and maybe he had to pull a soul stone and kill the one thing that mattered to him most. So that was where I thought it was going, but there were only 4, and he already took 4 people. But so I thought that was in plain sight. But there are a lot of things that I just didn't think about, like the fact that in the past there had been brujos that could bring people back to life, but you needed immense power, and they were also laying on that you gained immense power with the amulet. So I didn't realize that we were going to have a situation where Yadriel was going to bring all 4 of these people back to life. I personally thought, because they were also saying you could, and they were also saying, and there were also throwouts to the fact that brujas could pretty much save anyone, no matter their circumstances, as long as their heart was beating. And when we were in that scene, God, there's so much buffering right now. Is it about to drop stream again? Hold on. Okay, but it said, like, brujas could pretty much save anyone from, like, any circumstances they're in as long as their heart is still beating. And I thought, because when we got into this cavernous place that Uncle was trying to perform the ritual, he did, like, Julian was still alive. I don't understand how. It's been like 2 days with a goddamn knife in his chest, but he was still kind of alive. So I thought that was going to be the thing. I thought Marita was going to perform some like thing to bring Julian back from the literal brinks of death from there. But that's not the route they ended up going with. And I don't feel shocked that she was able to bring Yadriel back from like this pretty much self-sacrifice, because we've been told constantly how using human blood provides so much power that people tend to not be able to handle it. And still, like, I guess since it wasn't her blood and it wasn't much of a risk to her, and since it was the blood of 4 people, maybe 5, it was the energy used to perform the ritual was dispersed amongst all of them, so it didn't hurt anybody else. So that was fun. But I wouldn't hold it against it, because I don't think the book wasn't written to be a mystery. There were those aspects of it thrown out, but this wasn't intended to be much of a mind boggle. This was focused on the romance between Yadriel and Julian, which I love them, and I'm very happy that they're together. Throughout the book was really, really good at unfolding these characters, and especially with Julian, allowing us to just see more and more of them and like learn about them, because you have this bad boy who has this bad boy persona. He is like we see the first day Julian ends up going with Yadriel to school, and they're sitting with some of Maritza's friends, and they're talking about how everyone thinks that Julian and his friends are drug dealers and they're part of gangs and stuff, and that's really not at all who they are. And like to see that and to see those characters expand in that way was really, really well done. There were a lot of like really beautiful quotes also in this book. There was one point where I will say, it was Julian was trying to describe when he got attacked and like right before he thought he got killed, and he said like, "Oh, I think this guy jumped me," and Maritza's like, "Are you sure it was a guy?" I mean, he was well taller than I am. There are plenty of women that are over 6 feet. This guy manhandled me. The way that conversation unfolded really reminded me of the movie Signs, and that was not a good thing. That was that was not a good thing. And I will say there are also a couple chunks in the book where it feels like the author switched tones to try and to describe something in a way that wasn't like to try and describe something in maybe a more poetic way, or maybe in more of a like defining way. Like I know towards the end when we were at the Dia de los Muertos celebration, there was a lot of this comma da 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 to like describe it. So you had like, and there were these all over there were these comma definition all over the place, which that's like a whole conversation of BIPOC authors having to essentially cater to white audiences in their texts, and that is something that, like, you notice that there were also just some other parts that not necessarily, because I do think the author sometimes was able to really layer in the definitions and the explanations really well. It's just that part was really rough. But there were also parts where it just felt like the author was trying to describe an emotion or a scene in a way, in a different tone than was used in the previous book. But maybe that was the only way they could think to describe it. It just didn't mesh well, so it almost felt like I could like highlight a box around where the different tone jumped in, and that drew me out a couple times. Not gonna lie to you, I didn't know if I was gonna like Yadriel at the beginning of the book. He and Maritza were kind of assholes when they first summoned Julian, because their initial plan had been, oh, we're gonna be the ones to find Miguel and release his spirit. They found Julian, and that's obviously not the person they were trying to talk to and trying to find, and they just start talking around him, and I'm like, this guy literally just found out he's dead, and you guys are talking about, like, this isn't the one we want. You're talking about him like you got the wrong prize in your fucking Happy Meal. So, like, I started off kind of not liking them, because they were being very rude to this guy who literally just found out he's dead. So, that was rough. Ooh, there was another conversation. There was a conversation that there were a couple points where I feel like I guess I'm supposed to I can assume what we're supposed to happen, but I didn't feel like it necessarily, like, the story got us all the way there. For instance, there's one situation where Yadriel ends up eavesdropping on his dad and his uncle talking, and they're very vague. In the conversation is literally just, I don't see, like, you have to expand your mind, you have to be more open-minded, dad. What, like, uncle is saying, like, what, you have to be more open-minded to help the community grow, and then dad says, no, I've heard the end of it, and Yadriel kind of takes it as a personal slight against himself. I, frankly, was thinking that it was, the uncle was asking for something that would benefit himself, as opposed to something that would benefit Yadriel, but we're never clarified on what it was. And I personally was thinking, like, oh, he's going to take this moment to kind of help turn Yadriel and help keep Yadriel against his father. But he's really not talking about him at all, because, again, we never got what they were actually talking about. Another situation like that was similar to what I put in the title of the book. You see a lot Yadriel and Julian describing and, like, discussing, arguing about whether or not who Yadriel's trying to prove any of this to, because he summoned a spirit, so therefore doesn't he already have proof that he is a brujo? But Yadriel's like, no, I have to summon a spirit, and then I have to release them, and then they'll have all the proof. They have no reason to doubt that I'm really a brujo. And it's like, who are you trying to prove this to? And you have Julian saying you shouldn't have to prove this to anyone else but yourself. And Yadriel, we don't get a closing to this, I feel, but Yadriel's like, no, it's complicated, it's more complicated than that. And we don't get a closing to this, so I don't know if it was supposed to be like a Julian's right thing, but I can also see it being like Yadriel's in a type of community that's really close to his family and really close to like the community, everyone around them. They're a big family, they all love each other, but he wants them to be able, he wants all these people he cares so much about to be able to love him for who he is. And I understand that. And I can get that. I just feel like we didn't get, like, the author never tied up that loose end, per se. I will say, there were a lot of things represented in the book that I really liked, and then this is probably the last thing I'll talk about, because I think I'm going over my usual time. Yep. Last things I'm going to talk about. There were a lot of things represented that I actually really appreciate that you don't see a lot often. You have the, how the looks at Hispanic culture as it relates to the white culture and the American culture around it. Specifically talking about how Miguel's been gone for, I think, 2 days, and his parents go to report that, but the police don't speak English well, and the police are refusing to give them an interpreter. They're pretty much ignoring all of the claims about Miguel, and they start focusing on, like, where are your papers? Are you from here? And we get to learn about how deeply it hurts this community when people, they're, again, part of this big family, are deported and removed from each other, especially when they're separating kids. And it reminds me of, though this is, like, pretty, kind of relevant, but it reminds me, I literally just watched an episode from season 1 of Bones where, like, I didn't remember how aggressively Agent Booth in one episode he's working with his, they're working a case with a bunch of Hispanic communities, and in order to try and get information from a woman with her, like, who's literally breastfeeding her baby, he is threatening, she can't understand him, but he's threatening to deport her and keep the baby, and he's threatening that with literally everyone in the community. And it's the way of, it's taught in American culture that it's, of course, if they illegal aliens, it's illegal, they're criminals by that means, so deportation is the way to remedy that illegal act, but it is almost never treated humanely, even in a lot of cases in which we have shown the good guys on the side of deportation. It's not treated humanely. It's not. And to actually see the areas where the communities, from the point of view of the communities that have been hurt, was something really nice and not, I don't know how to describe it. It was really great to see this from, obviously, not the point of view of the person doing and perpetuating the cruelty of separating families like that. Another thing that I represented that I really appreciated was seeing a lot of actual broken homes, and especially because we had the balance of Yadriel, who comes from his community of brujas, who they're all a family, they all love each other, but they're still not, like, super rich. They are just privileged in the form of they have more of a loving community and a loving family. They have people to turn to. And then you have Julian, who a lot of his friends either have abusive parents or didn't have parents. One of the one person in their group that had loving parents, aside from Julian himself, who both of his parents passed away, I believe. Well, no, his mom left them, his dad passed away. But one of the kids who had loving parents, his parents got deported, so now he tends to be around Julian stay with his Julian and his brother, and but those kids who've had such hard times get written off because that's still another way in which they don't perpetuate the ideal life, is they don't have stable family situations. And it was great to see how people who are underprivileged in different ways still see how privilege differs in that way. How Yadriel couldn't understand these kids and couldn't understand the things that they've been to, how they could fall into a situation like being in a gang. One of them, the one he never would have expected, the kid that is super sweet and loving, he was in a gang because that kid just wanted somewhere to belong. He wanted someone to care about him, and it was a gang, and that's how those things work, moreover than having the kid that's super hard and gritty, because they would be more difficult to actually get anywhere, to agree to anything. And so, like, to see Yadriel, who would never have understood that type of underprivileged life, being introduced to that and being able to see the struggles that they have that are different from his own, that was something I also really appreciated. I'm not gonna lie, I have so many. I have like 3 pages of notes on this goddamn book. I have 3 pages. You can't see a damn thing. Oh no, you can't see it. I have 3 pages of notes on this book, and I have so many things to talk that I just loved about it. Definitely a 5-star. You should definitely read it. But that's all for me today. Next book I'm going to be reading is, I think it was A Whole New World by Liz Braswell. I think that's right. We're going to be reading that because there was another book that I was going to read instead of An Absolutely Remarkable Day. I think that was the one. There was something I was going to read instead of that, but someone else checked it out from the library before I could. So we're going to read A Whole New World. I'm probably going to be able to stream that next week. It's an audiobook. And if by then this other book is available, I will start that one. But that's literally it for me. I have to stop at some point. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time.